Joining us now, a man who's no stranger to the vitriol that's been kicked up in this debate, Congressman Barney Frank. Thanks for joining us this morning, Barney. Do you believe that you or members of your caucus are in real danger this morning?
I don't at this point. I will tell you in my own case, when people harp on my sexual orientation, I get more after-death threats than death threats. They tell me what's going to happen to me for all eternity, and I very much doubt their ability to influence that, so it doesn't trouble me. But the point is that that's not an atmosphere in which you want to deliberate. These are tough issues we have. There are legitimate arguments against the health bill. We ought to be having that debate without people saying, well, wait a minute, my wife, my kids, my husband, my family. You shouldn't have people say, you know, maybe I shouldn't get up and speak because I can't do this to my kids in school. That's what makes it so illegitimate, even if it doesn't reach the point of somebody being threatened. We don't know that. There have been people who've shot other people. There have been bombings. But even if it doesn't reach that level, it's an effort to kind of hijack the debate by coercive elements. And, you know, I'm glad that my Republican leadership colleagues now are starting to denounce it, but they've been very late to do that. Over the weekend, they were much more egging on this kind of behavior than denouncing it.
Some on the left have also been pointing to Sarah Palin's Twitter message encouraging her followers to do not retreat, instead reload, and her Facebook page has a map with crosshairs on 20 Democrats who voted for the bill. But as you say, Minority Leader Boehner denounced it. We heard from him there. So what do you hope to see from Republican leadership going forward?
Well, one, I think there ought to be some apologies. You know, for John Boehner, going back to when he went to the American bankers and promised them he'd kill any form of financial reform and belittled the people who work up here as little punk staffers. That's the kind of beginning of the bullying that, you know, it's ironic. We've been trying, many of us, to get junior high school students to stop the bullying. My state of Massachusetts just unanimously, Republicans and Democrats voted an anti-bullying bill. Well, then the kids turn on and they see members of Congress engaging in that kind of activity or cheering it on. When two people disrupted the proceedings on Sunday by shouting from the balcony, which is really an undermining of the fundamentals of democracy, and the guys who work for us tried to remove them, Republicans were standing on their feet, cheering them on, urging them physically to resist the officials. So I guess it's too late to undo that. I think they should apologize. But what I would like is for them to denounce this without sort of qualifying the denunciations, without explaining it, without saying, as I heard John Boehner say, well, of course you have a right to be angry, these are terrible tactics, but why not just get up and say this is wrong, there's no justification for it, and let's have the debate on the merits.
Okay, well, let's, while we have you, pivot to the next item on your to-do list, which is sort of sweeping financial regulation. You met with the president yesterday, promised that these new reforms would be passed this year, but then you also said this. Let's listen.
There will be death panels enacted by Congress this year, I hope, but they will be for those large institutions which will be put out of business, whose shareholders will be wiped out, whose executives will be fired, whose boards of directors will be replaced.
Just in case some of those shareholders are watching this morning, I'm sure they're curious, what large institutions would you like to see wiped out?
Well, I wouldn't like to see any of them wiped out, and I hope that the bill that we have, that we're going to enact, Senator Dodd and the President and I, we're clearly on schedule to the toughest new forms of financial regulation since the New Deal. We hope it will keep any institution from getting to the point which, like AIG or Lehman Brothers we saw a couple of years ago, where they became so indebted that they couldn't pay their debts, and then that threatened terrible financial harm because all the people they owed money to would then be damaged.
Right, but are there existing banks that you see falling as a result of this new legislation?
Well, you might want to check with the business reporters to understand why I'm not going to mention any names here, given what that would do in the market. But the other point I would make is this. I don't think that we will reach that point. I think we have rules in place now that will prevent them from doing that. We have rules in place that will say you cannot over-leverage. You cannot continue to do what you're doing. You cannot continue to indebt yourself without capital. You have to raise your capital or cut back on what you're doing. But we can't be sure that that will succeed. And what we're saying is if an institution becomes so indebted and is so little capitalized that it can't pay its debts, unlike AIG, which was kept alive in 2008, unlike some of these others, that will go out of business. The federal government will step in, it will dissolve that institution. It may pay some of the debts if it chooses to, purely to avoid a downward cycle, but you're not going to have any institution kept alive with federal funding.
All right, Congressman Barney Frank covering a lot of topics this morning. We really appreciate your time. Thank you.
You're welcome.